Expedia and Visit Scotland invite you to come step into centuries of history that await in Scotland. Castles steeped in legend walk along cobblestone streets. Come share the warmth of stories passed down through generations. This is a place with a past that is fully present today and all yours to explore. Plan your Scottish escape today at expedia.com/Visit Scotland.
You said this place was steps from the water.
We just haven't found the steps yet.
How much did we save?
Enough.
Enough to get lost?
Or you could book a stay with Hilton.
Welcome to your oceanfront room, just steps from the water.
The Hilton sale is on now. Book on Hilton.com or the Hilton app and save up to 20% to get the stay you expected. When you want savings, not surprises, it matters where you stay. Hilton, for the stay.
Drink? Now, shall we begin?
But he was covered in shame for having survived. That's right, and he did participate in Plataea and threw his life away in the battle, I suppose to cover his shame, to try to prove that he was the right stuff after all. But nonetheless, the Spartans disapproved of him doing that as well, and so he was left out of the honours after the battle.
Hello. The Battle of Thermopylae left one Spartan survivor, Aristodemus, and so he fought suicidally at Plataea a year later, in 479 BC, giving his life, such was his shame, but as you heard, failing to impress his fellow Spartans. The commander of the Greek troops against the Persians that day was Pausanias, Spartan Regent, and a quite fascinating figure who, according to Daniel Ogden, his new biographer, was responsible more than any other Greek for the preservation of Western Civilization as we know it. He joins me to discuss Ancient Sparta, the influential king Cleomenes, and Pausanias himself. Listeners, if you can bear to give the pod a rating, I'd be in your debt, but let's get on with the chat with Daniel on Ancient Sparta. Daniel, great pleasure to have you on. Thank you very much for joining me.
Pleasure to be here.
Well, Daniel, the moment this book arrived, I was very keen to speak to you because you've written about a figure from the ancient world who he's quite enigmatic, really, and he is a Spartan man, but I guess he sort of doesn't really behave, certainly towards the end of his life, like a Spartan. Did you choose Pausanias, and that's who we're talking about, because Pausanias is this kind of strange Spartan figure?
Yes, not much emphasis on the Spartan, but just because he is an absolutely fascinating figure. And I think uncrackable, unfathomable in the end. His life sort of ends in a sort of a wonderful, impenetrable tangle of ghost stories, and that's one of my things as well, you know. That was the angle that really drew me into this figure. Yeah, but also, you know, as I say in the book, you know. A case could be made that despite his bad end, this chap was the greatest of the Greeks, and if it weren't for him, Western civilization as we know it, which may be a good thing or a bad thing, wouldn't exist.
Well, I have to say, I was reading that, and I was very impressed by your claims here that really, without Pausanias, listeners, this is important here. Without Pausanias, basically, you wouldn't be sitting in your chair as professor of ancient history at Exeter University. But if I may be so bold, more importantly, Western civilization basically wouldn't be here.
Well, not as we know it, anyway.
No.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, the point being that he was the man who was responsible for destroying the Persian invasion of Greece in 480 to 479. Against impossible odds, as it seems. Nonetheless, he did that. If the Persians had managed to occupy Greece and make it into a satrapy, one of their the
Province.
dividing province is the word I'm looking for. Thank you. Provinces. Well, who knows? I mean, Greek culture would have continued, no doubt, because the Greeks were able to pursue their culture to a certain extent in Asia Minor, where they were within a Persian province. But it would have been different. It would have been different. Basically, Greek culture as we know it is basically classical Athens, and classical Athens would not have existed if the Persians had been occupying Athens. It would not have existed as we know it if the Persians hadn't destroyed Athens, in fact, in 480 to 479, because to take the art and architecture to begin with, classical architecture, classical Greek architecture was created after basically the Persians gave them a tabula rasa by destroying all the archaic, very nice. The fragments of it in the one can see in the Acropolis Museum, beautiful archaic sculptures there. But if that hadn't been swept away, the Athenians would not have started again and developed the classical style, which is so important to us. And then all the great, things like Homer, of course, are pre-classical. But all the great historians, the great tragedians, great comedians, Aristophanes, the great philosophers, they are the products of classical Athens. And although Homer had been put together, shall we say, a couple of hundred years earlier, probably might not have been preserved. If Athens had ceased to continue as we know it, because Athens had an important role in preserving that text as well. So, so the Greek culture that would have survived, if it did survive, would have looked rather different to the one we got.
Interesting. Really, the Athenians should have erected a significant statue to Pausanias, shouldn't they?
Yes, indeed, they should. Yeah, indeed, they should. Of course, they were much keener on promoting their own role in the victory. So, again, as you'll know, prior to the Battle of Plataea, they had taken the major role, and they hadn't been in charge. The Spartans again had been in charge, but they had taken the major role in that battle under Themistocles. And they never stopped reminding the rest of Greece and indeed themselves about that. But bear in mind that even after the defeat of the Persian fleet and after its retreat back to Asia Minor, there was still, so far as we can tell, the numbers are difficult to get on top of, a Persian army of 300,000 people. Right, plunked there in the middle of Greece, and the Greeks. Numbers are very, very difficult to get on top of. I say to figure out. We think that the Greek allied army standing against them was about 100,000, so 3 times as big. 3 times as big, and yet somehow or other, and emphasis there on somehow or other, because we don't really know how they did it. This tiny army annihilated this massive army. And Pausanias was in charge of it.
Well, I wanted to just pull back a bit and understand the society that Pausanias was born into, and he's a member of a elite, the elite family, or one of 2 elite families. But I wondered, for listeners who maybe are not familiar with ancient Sparta and its kind of political structure, would you be able to just explain a little bit about that?
Right. Well, yes. The constitution was quite bizarre. Let's concentrate on the royal families. So yes, royal families. So Sparta had 2 monarchies, 2 parallel monarchies. It always had 2 kings at a time. And they succeeded each other more or less in the way that modern kings and queens and princes succeed each other, and obviously with a modest admixture of dynastic murder here and there for decency's sake. So although there were these two kings, they weren't. And you might think, oh, hang on, that's going to create some sort of problem, isn't it? Don't they fall out with each other? And yes, indeed, sometimes they did fall out with each other, but it wasn't, as it were, the huge systemic problem you might imagine, because they weren't really the most powerful things in Sparta. They were very powerful, but probably the most powerful element was a group of magistrates called the ephors. There was also a council of elders. There was also the assembly of warriors. The king's role primarily was religious. They were leaders in religious ceremonies, but for the Spartans, war was religious. So they were war leaders too. So that is, and now Pausanias, it's important to say, was not king. He was regent. So your listeners, most of your listeners will know about Leonidas and his famous death at Thermopylae. I mean, the outrage is that, it was a suicide mission. Leonidas could not have not died at Thermopylae, but even so,
Yes, it's interesting that, because you write about that. It's we know that because of the criteria for going on the mission.
Yes, the fact that the men chosen for it all had sons, which implies that that they had to ensure that their families would continue, because there was no way they would do otherwise. Yes, quite. But obviously, Leonidas died. His army was annihilated, small as it was. Pausanias triumphed. And yet people talk about people. Leonidas is famous, and Pausanias is almost forgotten in many ways. It's an outrage, really. So anyway, but Leonidas died, leaving a small son, Pleistarchus, behind, and the regency for Pleistarchus was taken over not by Pausanias to start with, but by Cleomenes, who was Leonidas's younger brother. Cleomenes himself then died within a year, seemingly of natural causes, not in battle anyway. And at that point, therefore, his son, Pausanias, stepped up to the regency. So obviously, although Cleomenes was younger than Leonidas, he'd obviously started producing sons a lot sooner, so that Pausanias was, as it were, in his majority and able to exercise the regency for Leonidas' son Pleistarchus. So he never was king. Although his descendants his own son came to the throne, and indeed all the Spartan kings in the Aegead line. This is the Aegead family. After that, were actually descended from Pausanias, but he was never actually king himself.
I was just wanted to explore the family a little bit as well, because I think and you'll correct me if I get this wrong, which I probably will. And Cleomenes is this sort of great king of Sparta towards the end of the 6th century and into the 5th. Could you just describe his sort of, I guess, dominance of the Peloponnese and even into the Attica Peninsula?
Well, yes. So Cleomenes basically was the Spartan king who put together the Peloponnesian League, which is the League of Allies based in the Peloponnese. Not all the Peloponnesian states were involved in it. Argos was famously always hostile to Sparta, always as well the counterpoint to Sparta and Peloponnese. But yes, it was a very powerful entity, and Cleomenes was able to interfere in Athenian politics, bring armies into Athens, and chuck various Athenian politicians he didn't like out of Athens, things like that. A bit like Trump and Venezuela.
Is he the Trump of that kind of pre-classical period?
No, Cleomenes was mad and possibly wicked, but even so, a hell of a lot better than Trump.
Well, knowing what he did to the Argives, he wasn't, even with that in mind, he was still not quite in the league of Trump then.
No, I mean, I'm joking, obviously. But,
Yeah. Yes, I'm sure listeners have worked out that we're not taking this too seriously. And comparisons with the modern world are utterly frivolous.
Okay, let's just say this. Cleomenes certainly did a lot of good for the Spartan state. I think one can argue that Trump is not doing very well for the American state, even in itself. Arguably, Cleomenes did a lot of good for. Well, he certainly did a lot of good for the Peloponnesians in general. And had it not been for his sort of alliance building with the Peloponnesian League, probably there wouldn't have been those relationships there that Pausanias could draw upon.
That's interesting.
To bring the armies, the Greeks together.
And that league lasts many years, doesn't it?
Yes, indeed, yes. Of course, I mean, subsequently, of course, it's going to be that is basically the Spartan side in the Peloponnesian War. Yeah.
Yeah, interesting stuff. Okay, so and the relation that he is in with Pausanias, is he an uncle or
Oh God, yes.
I've put you on the spot, haven't I? Forgive me.
No, yeah. So
don't worry, we can edit any umming and ahhing.
So he is. Yes, he's an uncle. He's an uncle. That's right. Yes, because we have Anaxandridas. And then we have this wonderful story in Herodotus about the disputes between the two. He had two wives, and the sons of the two wives disputed the succession. This was quite a common pattern in Greece. This always happening in Macedon, for example. The sons of the two wives disputed the succession, and Cleomenes prevailed. But after the death of Cleomenes, the throne then did pass to, as it were, the other set of sons, not to any child of Cleomenes. Cleomenes only had a daughter, Gorgo. It passed to the eldest of the other group of sons, who was Leonidas. Yeah, and then Cleombrotus was the second son in that batch, and Pausanias his son. So Cleomenes was his half uncle, if you can say that. So,
yes.
Yeah.
Interesting. Just lingering, forgive me, on Cleomenes, you mentioned he sort of goes mad and dies.
Well, he's presented that way. Yeah, well, the story of his death, he clearly is, he's mad at that point, arguably not before, but although some wonderful stories. So yes, so he killed him, so he's imprisoned by, well, again, it's not entirely clear who, but presumably his rival brothers were ultimately behind it. He's imprisoned in a set of stocks, and he manages to persuade the guard to lend him his knife. I guess he's. I'm not exactly sure how these stocks are working. It wouldn't be like we think of medieval stocks with the arms through the holes. I think probably his feet were through, must have been through, as it were, the holes, as it were, leaving his legs sort of and his arms free, leaving his arms free and his legs sort of accessible to it, because he prevailed upon the guard to give him his knife and then proceeded to cut his skin in strips from his, legs up, and that's how he died. So I don't know whether it was an intentional suicide or not. I tell you, that does look a bit mad, doesn't it, by that point? I mean, there's all sorts of other sort of wonderful stories about Cleomenes. I mean, he's supposed to have had a childhood friend called Arconides, with whom he shared everything. And he promised him that should he become king, he would share all his counsels, all his deliberations with him still. And when Cleomenes did make it to the throne, he chopped off Arconides' head and then preserved it in a pot of honey, and would apparently indeed discuss all his plans with this head in the pot of honey. So again, if that story is true, that might also indicate a variety of madness, I suppose, even at that stage. But probably that's just a wonderful elaboration.
Interesting figure. So as we move then into the Persian Wars, I mean, in 490 BC, we see the Battle of Marathon. And just going back to your description of Pausanias as the most significant Greek, I believe, is it John Stuart Mill who describes the Battle of Marathon as the most significant battle influencing English history until the Battle of Hastings? I think he says something like that.
Well, that's new to me, and I'd be interested.
I probably mangled it completely.
Yes.
I guess my point is that you can pick, like one can pick battles from the ancient world and say how influential they were.
Yeah, well, yes. Well, it's counterfactual history, isn't it?
Yes.
Hadn't been. Yeah, well,
which I suspect you do not approve of. If I were a student, I'd get a poor mark.
No, not. I mean, I'm doing it myself in this book, aren't I? I'm saying
yes, indeed.
For Pausanias, then we wouldn't be sitting here as we are. I mean, I'm sure that's true, but I suppose one could say the same thing of many other people too. I suppose that's the point, isn't it? Yeah. Well. Yes. Well, I mean.
I've Googled it. He said the Battle of the Marathon, even as an event in British history, is more important than the Battle of Hastings.
Is he just talking about classicism there? Is he just
probably?
I guess is the importance of classical history and what it means to us is more meaningful than. I mean, I don't know. Yes, I don't know the context, but I can. That to me would be the obviously meaningful way of construing that. Yeah. Okay. Yes, I suppose. Yeah, I mean, in some ways, Herodotus. We're all. This is also Marathon, Salamis, Thermopylae, and Plataea. Pausanias is a great battle. We depend on Herodotus, the same guy Herodotus, for all of the accounts of all of these. And it must be said, his account of Marathon and his account of Thermopylae. Those are both, frankly, in themselves, more memorable, more striking. More meaningful in some ways than his account of Salamis and especially Plataea, despite the importance of the latter two battles. So maybe that's why they become sort of iconic in classical memory, as it were. Yeah.
Yes, and I noted that you used an interesting translation of Herodotus from. I was just looking at the bibliography from like a 100-year-old translation, so you don't go in for any of these sort of newfangled.
All I should say, it's in my own defence.
This isn't a criticism. I'm fascinated.
No, all the translations in the book are actually my own.
Right.
But the press wanted me to supply a list of. Of translations of the complete texts. I see. That people could then refer to, and so probably you're talking about the lobe, is it? The lobe.
Well, I wasn't sure. Yeah, maybe it is actually. I don't have.
If it's totally, it'll be the lobe.
Okay.
Yeah. So yes, because by default, I'm going to just direct people to the godliest. Yes.
The Harvard. Yeah, godly.
Yeah, it's a lobe. So those, I mean, in general, the lobes, irrespective of their date, with very few exceptions, irrespective of their date, they are the best translations.
I see.
I think they tend to be more accurate. I mean, they have the Greek or Latin on the facing page, so that sort of keeps them a bit more honest. And the huge advantage of the lobes now is that they're all available digitally. I have to go through a library website. I suppose you probably can subscribe as a private user, but if you get access to that, you have basically the whole of classical literature available to you in reliable translations. So that's where I would, in general, direct people in the first instance. Whenever my students, for example, say, "Well, where can I get a translation of X or Y?" I almost without hesitation, I just say, "Well, just go to the digital." What is called the digital lobe classical library, as they call it now. That's right. Yeah.
Wow. Okay. Well, the aesthetic though of those gorgeous green books on the shelf.
Oh yeah. And of course, I mean, let's not forget also that some of these older lobes, which are basically sort of Edwardian products. That was when people knew how to write English. So it's going to be, apart from them being really quite accurate, they're also, a pleasure to read, for their English alone.
Well, so for the listeners there, that was a nice interlude into a little bit of ancient Greek. But if we go into the Persian Wars, and then Thermopylae, of course, Leonidas is defeated. We've mentioned that. Do you think the Battle of Salamis then, because the Athenians are so involved, that really does overshadow Plataea? Because Themistocles wins Salamis, but we've still got a socking great Persian army in the middle of Greece.
I mean, obviously, what Salamis ended was the original Persian invasion strategy, which was to have the army supported by the fleet, because the fleet was no longer viable at that point. And of course, you may say there was a certain amount of loss of interest on the part of Xerxes, because Xerxes had accompanied the invasion, but when it was decided that the fleet should return, the fleet was no longer useful, he went back with it. Was that because he'd lost interest in the war, or was it simply because he was not so sure that he would be able to get home safely if he stayed with the land army? I guess maybe he thought that his things were looking a bit more dodgy. I imagine he was still confident of victory because, as I've said, I mean the numbers were just so well stacked in the Persians' favour. I think yes, and of course, like as we were saying before, classical literature as we know it is mainly the product of Athens, so they were constantly bigging up Salamis and making Salamis the key battle, because they had such a predominant role in it. Whereas the Spartans clearly had the predominant role at Plataea, even though the Athenians were the second biggest contingent and did make an important contribution there too.
There was a Spartan survivor of Thermopylae, actually, wasn't it?
There was a single survivor, yes, whose name escapes me, but he was covered in shame for having survived. That's right, and he did participate in Plataea and threw his life away in the battle. To cover his shame, to try to, prove that he was the right stuff after all. But nonetheless, the Spartans disapproved of him doing that as well, and so he was left out of the honours after the battle. Yeah.
Yes. The Spartans are quite, and as we'll learn, the Spartans are quite a harsh taskmasters, really.
Yeah, well, yes. Well, it was a militaristic state. So the Spartans had conquered the neighbouring territory of Messenia, a very large territory, and they conquered their own Laconia way back in the Archaic period, if not before that even. And they basically presided over Helot serf populations there. And they basically extracted all the wealth out of the serfs and their farming, so that the citizens themselves, they didn't work. They were just, at least not the younger men didn't. They were simply just paid to train and be basically a permanent army, which is why Sparta was so military dominant.
And I was so interested in Spartan myth as well, because I know myth is an area that really is your area of expertise. But there is this sort of Menelaus and Castor and Pollux are kind of figures overseeing almost Plataea. How conscious do you think the Spartans of this period were of their mythic forebears?
Oh, I think they were intensely conscious. Yeah, they were very religious. I mean, we've talked about the religious role of the kings and war being basically almost like a subcategory of religion for the Spartans, therefore. So there's this wonderful elegy by Simonides, who, a famous, in his day, famous lyric poet, who clearly knew Pausanias personally, and he wrote a lot of stuff for him. I'm still calling it the New Simonides. I suppose it was discovered and published about 30 odd years ago now.
Yeah, I think you write 1992.
Yeah, well there you go.
Amazing.
Yeah. So that's, yes, for me that's still brand new.
Yes, me too.
And when I mention that, when I tell my undergraduates that, they roll their eyes, But anyway, for them.
But it's encouraging, presumably, for ancient historians to know that, pieces like this can still be uncovered.
Oh, absolutely. Yes, absolutely. Yeah. And it's fragmentary, of course. But there's enough of it there for us to see Simonides describing the portion that survives substantially is Simonides' description of Pausanias marching his army up through the Peloponnese to go and meet the Persians in central Greece. And riding beside him are the Dioscuri, Castor and Pollux, very important figures at Sparta, and then Menelaus, again, Sparta's great hero. So Menelaus was the great king of Sparta during the Trojan War, the brother of Agamemnon. Remember, Helen was Menelaus's wife. She was the one stolen. And just outside Sparta at Thermopylae, there was this great shrine of Menelaus, the Menelaion. So he was an important figure for them, certainly. Yeah.
Really, the peak for Pausanias is after the Battle of Plataea, and he's sort of lauded, really.
Yeah.
But this is interesting because this is a handover, roughly, from Herodotus to Thucydides.
Yes, right.
And that basically means our view of Pausanias changes from this sort of rather attractive figure to a less so.
Yes, it's an uncrackable conundrum in the end. But so Herodotus rather takes his story down basically to Plataea, a few skirmishes after that, but that's basically the end of his story. That's the culmination of his story. And then Thucydides, who wants to write about the Peloponnesian War, which is about 50 years later, nonetheless, Herodotus is the great predecessor, and he thinks he needs to fill in the join the dots between the end of Herodotus and Peloponnesian War, starting in the 430s BC. And so he does give us this brief history of the intervening period, starting exactly where Herodotus leaves off. So it is very strange. So basically, Herodotus' Pausanias is the goody, the great hero. There is one passing reference to a sort of regretful reference to things going wrong later on for Pausanias, and that's it. But Thucydides, from the start, for Thucydides, he's a villain. He's a tyrannical bully, wicked, corrupt, trying to betray the whole of Greece to the Persians, trying to marry the daughter of the Persians. This kind of stuff, trying to enrich himself, so the question that we're left with, of course, is it simply that these historians write with very different agendas, and was Pausanias basically the same all along, or basically did Plataea go to his head? Did his basically impossible victory? I mean, we've got to remember that the Persian Empire was something like I did the calculation. I forget exactly what the results are. Something like 100 times in size. Greece, the
whole of Greece,
not one little Greek city. So it's just an inconceivable victory in many ways. Did he go to, and he was a very young man as well. We think he was born around about 505 BC, so probably just about 25 at the time of the victory. Did it all go to his head? Did it turn his mind? We can't decide. One thing we know for sure, I think, is that Thucydides, being an Athenian, is very seriously reading Athenian sources, getting his information from Athenians, and it is quite clear that the Athenian commanders. So I should say, after the Persians had been booted out of Greece, Pausanias was then leading the forward advance against the Persians at Byzantium, Istanbul, and there he was with the Athenian allies as well, and the Athenian commanders there, Aristides and Cimon, clearly were, I think, conspiring against him. to some extent. They were undermining his position, and if he ended up being whatever, so delivering summary justice to some of his own allied troops, it may be because they were being insubordinate. Because it does seem that already from that point, the Athenians had this vision that they could build an empire of their own, the Athenian Empire, which indeed they did then construct, and that was again ultimately that was the Athenian bloc against the Peloponnesian bloc in the Peloponnesian War, which we mentioned.
Yes, it seems to me that it's in the Athenian interest to portray the Spartan rulers as, they're terrible. You're much better under us.
Exactly.
Because they'll make you. I think. What does Pausanias? Doesn't he make some poor unfortunate carry an anchor?
Yes. Yes. So, supposedly that was one of his punishments for officers that had failed in some way. Yes, sure. Yeah. Or to stand there holding an anchor for some period.
That does not sound like much fun, I have to say.
No. Indeed.
But I'm more persuaded by that kind of argument than Thucydides, because Thucydides can be very positive about Spartan commanders, can't he? Like Gylippus and Brasidas, who he.
Yes. Oh, yeah. And he does say he does say also. I should say that although his sort of concentrated portrait of Pausanias towards the beginning of his history is completely negative, he does make a passing remark later on in the history in some other context to the effect that Pausanias did a great thing for Greece. I mean, I forget exactly what the words are, but it's almost as if that Thucydides is aware of, as it were, the positive version of Pausanias, and somehow the mask slips, shall we say, at this later point, and the positive Pausanias peeps through again in Thucydides. Yeah.
It's always interesting to me, and I think I'm right in saying that Plutarch, who writes biographies of many of the figures in this period, he doesn't pick Pausanias to write about. I would have thought he would be quite an attractive figure for him to write about.
It is a puzzle. Yes. Because
unless it's lost. Actually, but we would know, wouldn't we?
No, there wasn't one. No. Yes, because he was so morally complex. And I mean, there is one very short biography surviving in Latin by Nepos, Cornelius Nepos, and that does. And there's a sort of mini biography in a sense in Diodorus as well, and those biographies do sort of play the usual sort of rhetorical games, moral and rhetorical games that you get in ancient biographies. And then they're making the most of it. Was Pausanias a good thing or a bad thing? This kind of stuff. So it was all there, and it is curious. It is curious that Plutarch didn't choose Pausanias. So, well, I was going to say I really wish he had done, but then if he had done, then probably I wouldn't have had the book to write.
We have a new Plutarch.
It would have been a different book to write, wouldn't it? I mean, the fun of it for me is putting it all together, of course. So I'm kind of glad that Plutarch didn't do it before me. Pausanias does feature to a certain extent in his life of Aristides and his life of Cimon. Again, Plutarch is more focused on that Athenian side at this point. Yeah.
Well, okay. So to just explore that a little further, if since you are the new Plutarch writing a life of Pausanias, which Roman would you match Pausanias with?
Oh my God.
Have I put you on the spot there again?
That's a left field question, isn't it? Right. Oh my God. I mean,
you can pick someone who's already been, halved.
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, what are the criteria of comparison? Is it the great victory? Is it the unfairly treated by history? Is it the moral complexity?
I guess, yeah. It's just like a stunning victory, and then like a life of two halves, I suppose.
Yeah. No, I mean, the only chap that pops into my mind, again, he won't be someone very well known to your listeners, is Regulus, who was the Roman commander in Africa, in North Africa, Punic War, simply because he did preside over victories, but then he had a very bad end, being tortured to death by the Carthaginians when they finally captured him. Again, that's a bit random, but
no, I like it. That's great. Okay, well, you have to just persuade James Rom to let you write a biography of Regulus.
Well, actually, I have been asking myself if I'm going to write another biography, who would I do? I'm not sure there'd be enough to go on with Regulus, but Cleomenes does appeal. We were talking about. I mean, there have been biographies of Cleomenes, so he's not kind of like the virgin territory that Pausanias was. So.
Interesting that, because a very good friend of mine at university wrote his dissertation on Cleomenes, and his argument was that he had been completely stitched up and had not committed suicide and was murdered or something. I think it was a kind of a sort of rewashing of Cleomenes, but I have to say I was always skeptical.
Yeah, well, we can't. Yes, you can't play Agatha Christie at this remove.
No.
So, yeah. I mean, one can talk about sort of broader patterns in what they're attested of, what ancient people are attested of doing. One can talk about the literary agendas of the people that write about them, but it's very difficult to say whatever Cleomenes, whatever. Cleomenes in the library with the lead piping, and no, it wasn't that. It was in the study with the dagger or whatever. We can't play that sort of game with ancient history, I'm afraid.
No, and that's a very important lesson, I think, for us to end our chat on, for listeners to take away and impress their friends with. So, Daniel, this has been fantastic. I've put links to the book in the show notes. I purposefully didn't want to discuss Pausanias' end, because that's for the readers to learn. But best of luck with the book.
Thank you very much indeed. And can I just say that Pausanias' end is even though what he achieved was so brilliant, his end is by far the most exciting and fascinating aspect of his life. So it is worth hanging on for.
Oh, that's tantalizing for the listeners.
That is what I'm doing. I'm tantalizing them, yes.
Thank you, Daniel.
We've come to the end of this club meeting, so thank you for listening. If you want to get in touch about club benefits, please do, either by email or on X or Instagram. Links are in the show notes. I've also included my Substack link so members can read articles I've written on various matters that may be of interest. The History Book Club is written and presented by me, Oliver Webb-Carter. Music is by listener Chat DMZ. Episodes continue next week and every week, so please do join, subscribe, and if you can provide the club with a 5-star rating, we would be delighted. In the meantime, I thank you again, and now I have to usher members out into the real world. Until next time.
You can't reason with the sun. Trust us, we've tried. This summer, it's time to put that angry ball of fire on mute. Columbia's Omni-Shade technology is engineered to protect you from the sun's harsh rays that can burn and damage your skin. The sun is relentless, but so is our gear. Level up your summer at Columbia.com to spend more time outside and less time slathering on aloe lotion. You're welcome. Columbia, engineered for whatever.
Meet the new iSIMS, the single talent acquisition platform that's fully future-ready. It works wherever and however you hire, with insights no one else offers. One solution that fits seamlessly into your existing tech stack, which is why IT and HR leaders trust it. With the best of enterprise-grade software and AI, iSIMS helps you identify and secure the right talent faster. iSIMS, powering exceptional hiring. Learn more at isims.com.
Did you know if your windows are bare, indoor temperatures can go up 20 degrees? Turn the temperature down with Blinds.com and get up to 50% off custom window treatments like solar roller shades and more during the Memorial Day mega sale. Whether you want to DIY it or have a pro handle everything, we've got you. Free samples, real design experts, and zero pressure. Just help when you need it. Shop up to 50% off site-wide and huge savings on doorbusters right now during the Memorial Day mega sale at Blinds.com. Rules and restrictions apply.
Hank joined BJ's Wholesale Club the day he became a father of 30.
I coach football.
Now Coach Hank saves up to 25% off grocery store prices. 30 pounds of pasta, 3 cases of protein bars, 75 sports drinks.
And that's just pregame.
He knows teamwork, and BJ's knows savings. This is your home, Coach. Home of the save. Join for just $20 at bjs.com/SW Fort Worth and save 10 cents a gallon on gas for 6 months. Now open. Limited time offer. New members only. BJ's. Home of the save.